Hello, my magnificent and brilliant students. Today we're going to go over lesson 5-4, and that's going to be called the Slope Intercept Formula. All right, so we're getting into formulas, kind of like how we have the slope formula. Now this is called the Slope Intercept formula, and this is just part 1. So I'm going to step off to the side for a second, and you need to copy down everything, including this little graph and the little side notes. So make sure you copy down everything as I step off to the side. Alright, so you have everything copied down. So make sure that you pay attention to this. Alright, so what is the slope-intercept formula? You've probably seen it before, but here it is. It's y equals mx plus b. Okay, that's the formula. Y equals mx plus b. It's nothing but a bunch of variables. So we need to define what those are. Well, we should know that slope is represented by the letter m. So that's why it says slope. It's the number that's in front of the x. Okay, so slope is always represented by the letter m. Now we're going to have a new variable, and that's going to be the variable b. Doesn't matter if it's upper case or lowercase. Normally you'll see it lowercase. But the b will represent a y-intercept. Okay? And that's very important. So b is the y-intercept. And remember, from an intercept is a dot that lands on the y-axis, which means it has no x, and then wherever it lands, that's on the y-intercept. Now, this y and the x, to be honest, you really don't have to worry about those right now, okay? But y and x just represent coordinates. Remember, I said every equation, and yes, this is an equation, that has a y and an x, mean it makes a line. So we have to have a y and an x for an equation of a line, right? So that's what the y and the x are. But we don't have to worry about those in this lesson. So we are going to focus on the slope, the letter m, and the y-intercept, the letter b. And you're going to love this formula for graphing. So much easier than table graphing, and so much easier than even graphing with the intercepts, right? Now here's one big point that I want to make before we head on to some examples, is the difference between the y-intercept and a plain letter y. Okay? This is not the same as the y. Okay? A lot of people will get those mixed up, and this is why I have this little graph down here. So make sure that you pay attention to this, right? So a y is a coordinate, right? It's part of a point. So if you take a look at this point, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my x, right? It's an ordered pair. This is my x. And then I go up 3. 1, 2, 3. This is my y value, right? So a y value just means it's part of an ordered pair, okay? Remember, every dot on a graph has to have two numbers, an x and a y. Well, that's what that is. So this is 4, 3. Now be careful, a y-intercept, right? A y-intercept, which is going to be represented by one number, you'll see later, is actually 2. So this b, a y-intercept, is, since we know that it's on the y-axis, a lot of times we'll just say the y-intercept is 3. But you should know that technically this is a 0, 3. And that's why I have that 0, y. So the y-intercept actually represents two numbers, or it represents a dot on a line. A y by itself only represents half of a point, right? If there was no x, there would be no point. So there is a difference between a y-intercept, it means it has to be on this line. Okay? A y-intercept is always on the y-axis. So that's the difference between a y-intercept and just a plain letter y. Okay? Y-intercept is a dot on a line, and technically it's 0, 3. But you see the difference between them? So don't get those mixed up. And now we're going to get ready to do some examples with our slope intercept form. All right, so here's example 1. So go ahead, hit pause right now, and copy this down. All right, so now that you hit pause, so let's just read this. It says, what is the slope, right? So slope is what? The letter M, and the y-intercept, so the letter B, of the graph, and it says y equals 5x minus 2. Now this is how easy this is. So let's take this formula and write it underneath this and line it up. So here's my y equals, let me put my m, because the m is in front of the x, so I'm going to line it up with that 5. I'm going to put plus b. Right? So there's the slope intercept formula. This is how easy it is to find slope and a y-intercept if they give you an equation, right? If you line them up, well, what's right above the letter M? That's your slope. What's right above the B? Your y-intercept. Now, if you take a look over here, slope should be in a fraction form, right? It's rise over run, right? So it's like rise over run, and sometimes rise can go down. So even though this is not a fraction, you make it a fraction. So this would be 5. And how do you make a fraction? You just put 1 underneath it. Now, the b is the term at the end. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, okay? So this happens to be a negative 2. So your y-intercept will be a negative 2. And remember, that is a dot on the y-axis at negative 2. And you're done with example 1, right? And this means, remember, up 5 over 1, okay? So you don't have to put the arrows, but that's just a reminder that slope is directions, and the y-intercept is going to be our starting point. All right, so here's example 2. Go ahead and hit pause and write this down and copy down the slope and the y-intercept symbols. All right, so do that real quick. Hit pause now. So this is going to be a really simple problem, to be quite honest. So it says write in an equation. Well, what's the equation? It's right above it. Y equals mx plus b. This formula is an equation, okay? It's an equation of a line. So write an equation with the slope of negative 3 over 4 and the y-intercept of 7, right? So identify your terms. Well, slope we know is represented by m, so I'm going to put negative 3/4, and my y-intercept is 7. So we have our m and our b, and guess what? You're basically done. Using this as your template, right, your guide, you just simply go y equals, okay, what's my m? It's right there. Negative 3/4. Put it in front of an x, so put an x right here. And then if this is positive, put plus. If it's not, if it's a negative, put minus, but that's a positive 7, so go plus 7. And you now have the equation of a line that has a slope of negative 3/4 and a y-intercept of 7. And it's y equals negative 3/4 x plus 7. That's how easy example 2 is, so let's keep going on. All right, so go ahead and either hit pause right now or just take a moment to write this down. So we have example 3. It says graph, right? Graph y equals 2x minus 7. Off to the side, I put my symbols for slope and my y-intercept. And draw this graph. I know it looks a little bit weird. I went really big on the negatives, small on the positives, and I didn't even worry about this side. Okay, so you can make your graph look a little bit odd like this one. So make sure to hit pause and get that written down. All right, so this is how easy it is to graph with that slope-intercept formula, right? So here's my equation, y equals 2x minus 7. If I write above it that formula, y equals mx plus b, right? It lines it up. What is my slope? My slope is 2, right? So my slope is 2, but you want to make it look like a fraction because you need a rise and a run. So the rise is 2, put it under a 1. Over a 1, sorry. And then my b, even though it says plus b, I have a minus 7. So I'm going to put my y-intercept at negative 7. Now, your y-intercept, when you're graphing, b can also, you think of it as the beginning. It's the starting point, okay? It's the beginning. Right? It's the beginning. That's what, right? That's what a y-intercept is. So watch how easy this is. So because this is a y-intercept, I get to go on the y-axis. I get to go to the negative 7, which is right here, and put a nice large dot. That is my y-intercept. That is the beginning. This is where the rest of the problem, I'm going to start from this point. I'm not going to start from the origin anymore. I'm going to start from the beginning, the y-intercept. Now I'm going to use my slope. Now remember, slope is the directions. It's not a point, it's directions. It makes lots of points, but it's directions. And remember, since that's positive, that's going to go up, and we always travel to the right. So, starting from my y-intercept, I go 1, 2 over 1. Count again. 1, 2 over 1. 1, 2 over 1. 1, 2 over 1. And then you can see where I'm going. 1, 2 over 1. Make points all the way through your graph. And your graphs on your homework are going to make look much better because you're going to actually have nice grids or graph paper, basically. So it won't look as messy as this one. But you draw a line through them. But again, look how easy it was to graph this. I didn't have to use intercepts. I didn't have to make a table. All I had to know was make sure it was in this form. This y equals mx plus b. The 7 is where it starts. Use my slope as my directions. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Make those dots, connect the line. Boom! You're done. Right? And here's a quick check. My slope is a positive number. My line is going up in a positive way. Nothing more said, but we'll do one more example. Okay, so here is example 4. Basically, I just changed the equation, so I have y equals negative 3x plus a 4. I, again, put your slope and your b off to the side, and quickly do another graph. I think I made this one go down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it's at negative 6 down here. All right, so make sure you just hit pause real quick, and draw another graph and draw that equation. All right, so again, really simple. If you write the equation right above it, whatever line is in front of the x is your slope. So my slope this time is a negative 3. My b happens to be a positive 4. Remember, slope should look like a fraction, so it's over a 1. Go to my y-intercept, that's the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, here's my 4, right there. There's my beginning dot. Now remember, 3, it's a negative, so that means go down. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 over 1. I'm always going to the right. 1, 2, 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And basically, there's my line. Right, that's how easy it is. Sorry about how sloppy that looks. You won't have to worry about that on your homework. But again, this is how easy it is to graph this type of stuff. And make sure that you watch part 2 of this video. But there is a worksheet just for this one. And never forget to have a math-tastic day.